Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Iraj News. Joining us now from our Abuja studios is the Chief Press Secretary to the Independent National Electoral Commission Chairman, Rotimi Oyekanmi. Welcome to the show, Rotimi. Great to have you.
Hi, Rotimi. How are you? Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yes, good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Now, following the elections in Osun and before then Ekiti, there have been a number of questions raised about the neutrality of INEC, about the credibility of INEC, and INEC's readiness to conduct a free, fair, and credible election in 2019. What's your take on this? Is INEC really neutral, particularly as we hear that your boss, the INEC chairman, has been going to the villa to have meetings, and the PDP has even issued a statement saying that these meetings are not normal meetings, if I may use that phrase.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I want to assure you and all Nigerians that the Commission is neutral. We are independent. Before Osun, we had conducted about 190 different types of elections. Rerun elections, by-elections, and end-of-tenure elections. And most of all these elections, except 2 or 3, have been concluded at first ballot. And where you don't have foreign interference with our processes, we conclude our elections at fourth ballot. But where we have issues, like we had when we had this state consultative election in Port Harcourt 3, where we were under a siege, we had gunshots, we were used to scare our staff away from the polling units, and 3 of our resident electoral commissioners literally had to scamper for safety. When you interfere with INEC process and we are not allowed to do what we are supposed to do, that's when we have issues. Now, we had conducted 6 governorship elections. Even Anambra, that many people felt will end up with issues, we conducted, we concluded, and nothing happened. So for us, our focus is on our mandate, and we are trying our best to deliver, good and free, fair, and credible election. And as far as we are concerned on our side, we are ready. Our hope is that politicians will allow us to do our job.
Well, INEC declared the election inconclusive, and that, created a lot of misgivings. The position of those who criticize INEC is that INEC was used in Osun to manipulate that gubernatorial election. And there were reports of the direct involvement of some INEC officials. You may deny it, but this may be one of the issues that the petitioner will bring up at the Election Petition Tribunal.
Well, you are a lawyer, and I'm sure you know that when a case is in court, you don't comment. But what really happened in Osun, I just want to do a little bit of history. The first election, the main election, there were problems with 7 polling units across 4 local governments. Now, if we didn't have those issues, there would have been no need to conduct a supplementary election. And the margin of lead, remember, the elections have been conducted now. The era of landslide victory is gone, where you will have somebody with like thousands of votes and the other one coming like a midget far behind. No, because votes now count. The margin of lead after the first election was 353 between the leading political party and the runner-up. And because issues were at the 7 polling units across those 4 local governments, and the number of registered voters was far above the figure, this margin of lead, we felt that we should give them that opportunity to also cast their ballot. And that was what we did. Unfortunately, what happened, and where we are, the petitioner has gone to court, and we should leave it at that. But you see, our own take at INEC is that, look, we don't go to election with the intention of failing. It involves a lot of things. And I also want to state something. No one person, either the INEC chairman himself, any national commissioner, or resident electoral commissioner is capable of influencing the election result in favor of a candidate or, or a political party. We have passed that stage because it's a whole chain. If you want to rig, you have to involve a lot of people. You have to be able to break into a lot of processes. There are checks and balances at every level, and the thing is much more difficult now. In fact, if you are supposed to do carry out an activity and you are seen doing something else, there's something that will raise the alarm. It's like the election materials that we're now tracking. When you take off from the central bank and you are going to a local government, you are being tracked. So if your vehicle stays more than 10 minutes at any point in time, at anywhere, we're going to receive an alarm. And then we want to know, what are you doing there? Why are you there? What's going on? So that's the way it is. The thing has been so improved that it is impossible to rig the elections. And again, this commission introduced what we call the people's poster, the people's result sheet, where you have the election result being pasted at every polling unit. Ask questions. And in Anambra, where we started with that innovation, you know, by the time INEC was ready to disclose the overall result, all the civil society organizations and observer groups had their figures. So as we were rolling out the figures, they were just ticking on the sheets of paper. And at the end of the day, they discovered that what we declared was exactly what they also saw across all the local government areas in Anambra State.
Rotimi, yeah, I'm glad that you admitted that, you know, it's part of the responsibility of INEC to prevent rigging. And INEC, you know, listening to you, seems to have taken some steps. But in Ekiti and in Osun, to cite those two recent examples, the reports indicated that there was massive rigging, open rigging, even at the polling station, with the connivance or the collusion of INEC officials and security officials. And we have not heard of anybody really being taken to task on account of this. So will you say, you know, with these new styles of rigging that have emerged under the watch of the present INEC, that enough is being done and that we have no cause to fear in 2019?
Well, I don't know what people say. I mean, what people mean when they say rigging. Rigging in what sense? Now, when you go to the polling unit, there are several processes. But the process of voting is that as you are accredited, you are voting. And there's a smart card reader. You bring your permanent voter's card and you slot that into the smart card reader to ensure that you are actually the owner of the card, and that card was issued by INEC. And after that, you go to the biometrics. So we are sure you are the owner, you are the authentic voter that has presented himself or herself. So you cast your ballot, and it's there, and it's counted, and we declare results. At what point, really, will anybody rig? Are you going to introduce another figure? Are you going to introduce other ballot papers? Everything is done in the open. So those who say people rigged, in what manner? Because I want to know, did they see us stuffing the ballot box with ballot papers?
INEC
can assist. See us changing figures?
INEC can assist rigging by cancelling, you know, votes, by, you know, doing what ordinarily, you know, it should not do. But let me ask you another question. The director of operations, former director of operations in INEC, became a major issue, you know, in the assessment of INEC's integrity. Now, she's been moved to health and safety, right? And now we hear that the chairman, Professor Yakubu Mahmoud, is under pressure to reinstate her as director of operations for INEC. What is the true situation?
Well, I want to say something, and I'm saying this with all sense of responsibility. The person you are talking about is a national commissioner. National commissioners and resident electoral commissioners are appointed by the federal government. There's a process, and it's only the federal government that can remove them. That's number one. Number two, that particular national commissioner was in charge of electoral operation. She was not a director, she was a national commissioner. And I told you earlier that we had conducted 119 different types of election. This was a national commissioner in charge of that department as we conducted all these elections. And I also say this, that it is for lack of understanding that anybody outside INEC will think that one national commissioner is capable of manipulating the process. It is simply impossible, you know.
To be sure that I'm talking about the same person. I'm talking about Mrs. Amina Zachary. Is that the same person we're talking about?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the person I'm talking about.
Please go ahead.
For me, honestly, Nigerians should even show gratitude to this woman's contribution to the electoral process. Those things that you talked about, those things that, that have been, distributed to newspapers, statements, they are all lies. It is simply not true. That woman has served this country to the best of her capability, and it is simply impossible for any national commissioner or resident electoral commissioner to manipulate the electoral process. That's where we are now.
Well, Mrs. Amina Zachary, you refer to certain publications. It's said to be the niece or a niece of President Buhari, who is the candidate of the ruling party in the coming elections. So don't you think that there is a story there, as alleged?
Well, this is humanity. I'm sure that, we are interconnected one way or the other. And if you look at all the government establishments, you have your relative, your cousins, your nephews somewhere, if we trace it properly. But I am not even concerned about whether somebody is related to the president or not. I'm talking about INEC processes and procedures. This is important. That's what Nigeria should focus. Is it possible? The question should be asked. Is it possible for the processes to be abused? The answer is no. Is it possible for one individual, no matter how powerful, to change figures or rig elections? The answer is no. So whether she is with in the electoral department or where she is now, what I'm saying is that she has a duty, she has a job to do, she did it very well, and in the commission's wisdom, she was redeployed to another department, not because some people were asking for her to be removed, because you cannot remove a national commissioner. If you have any problem with the national commissioner, you go to the federal government, you submit a petition. If it pleases the federal government, they remove that national commissioner. Well,
okay, I get your point, but let this point also be made, that the perception out there is that she had to be moved from operations to health and safety because of the role that she allegedly played in the Osun election. But let me ask you this. INEC has told us that we have a total at this moment of about 84.5 registered voters. When is INEC going to give us a breakdown, of the distribution in terms of geography, in terms of states, local governments, the actual figures, so that Nigerians can have a clear picture of the distribution, of voters and the voting pattern and the relative strength across the country? Because people are saying INEC has refused to break it down for the electorate because that may also be another way of assisting the ruling party to win, putting it directly.
Thank you very much. The voters register as of 2015 was about 70 million. The breakdown of the 70 million is available. We have presented that several times. In fact, in our several meetings with political parties, we had given them the breakdown per state and gender and even age grades and profession. In fact, the breakdown of the voters that cast their ballots in 2015, the breakdown has also been given. Now, between April 2017 and August 31st, 2018, this year, we conducted the continuous voter registration exercise for the first time in the history of the Commission, and we were able to register 14.5 million new voters, new registrants. Now, those who registered between April and December 2017, their PVCs are ready and they are collected. Those who registered between January and August this year, part of some of the PVCs are ready and have been sent to the local government areas, and the others are in the process of being produced. And we are promised that they will get their PVCs by December, by the grace of God. Now, when we finish the cleanup, according to the 2019 timetable and schedule of activities, we have a time in January when we are going to publish the voters register and give all political parties the breakdown and all of that. It will be available because there is nothing to hide.
How about the budget for INEC? Have you been able to get that approved and access the budget? And the fear that your boss expressed earlier, that if money did not come in at a certain time, then, INEC may not be able to provide necessary logistics. If there is any difficulty with, getting enough funds, should we expect the possibility of INEC postponing the 2019 election?
I want to make something absolutely clear. The 2019 general elections will not be postponed. Just last week, the Senate passed the budget, and the figure passed was the exact figure that INEC presented to the executive, and that was the exact figure that the executive presented to the National Assembly, 189.2 billion. We don't envisage any problem. The processes that we need to do, we have been doing those processes because a general election has three components. You have the pre-election activities, you have the election day activities, and you have the post-election activities. As far as we know, as far as our preparations and the timetable are concerned, we are on course. And with the approval by the Senate and our understanding with the government, we shouldn't have any problem. I think that the issue of the budget will be resolved in a short while.
Well, there's also the outstanding issue of the Electoral Amendment Act, right? Which the National Assembly has passed, awaiting presidential assent. Now, in the event that the president rejects that bill, what will happen? That's one. Two, if the president passes, assents to that bill, and it becomes the new law, your chairman has said that certain aspects of that law cannot be implemented for the 2019 elections. And he made it very clear that there will be no electronic voting. Now, how much confidence would that give people who think that electronic voting will probably be the scientific way of avoiding rigging?
Thank you very much. Well, as we speak, there is no vacuum. We have in existence the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. Yes, that we are using. So if the bill is not signed by the president, we just make use of what we have, and we are good to go. But just like the chairman of INEC said recently, if the thing is signed into law, we've already started preparing for the implementation of those aspects that we can implement immediately. But electronic voting cannot be implemented because of the processes involved. It is just too late. With less than 120 days to the general elections, it is too late to embark on that because it is a large country and we cannot deploy technology throughout the country before that election. And that will be considered for subsequent general elections. But even the process that we have now, it's strong enough to deliver free, fair, and credible election. I can assure Nigerians of that.
Okay, Mr. Oyekanmi, I have some questions for you before Ruben jumps in. INEC should be seen, not just seen to be independent, but should be independent. You did not categorically tell us why your boss was visiting Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, behind closed doors. But let me also ask you this. The APC debacle in some states, especially Zamfara, where the party insists that it's going to field candidates. It did hold its primaries, but the commission insists that, no, that's not going to happen. How are you resolving this?
Thank you very much. Well, I don't know the crux of the matter discussed during the INEC chairman's visit to the person you talked about. I haven't discussed it, so I don't know what they discussed. I will need to consult him to know that, so I can't comment on that. Secondly, the issue of Zamfara also is before the court. But I just want to say this. We are the regulator, So if a regulator is saying something and the regulated is saying another thing, which one are you going to take? So I will leave it at that.
Again, sorry, Ruben, let me jump in here. We continue to see a high turnout of voided votes. Some people query INEC on this, saying that the Education Department, which you have in the Commission, is not living up to its expectations when we continue to see the turnover of voided votes we see. And this was an issue in the Osun State election.
Thank you very much. We are deeply concerned about voided votes because each vote matters. And it's part of what we are stepping up as our voter education strategy to teach people, especially those who are not lettered, on the importance of thumbprinting correctly in the space provided and the party logo they want to vote for. We are stepping that up, and we are involving all stakeholders, the traditional rulers, our religious leaders, and youth leaders and role models to engage with youth, with people at the grassroots, the market women, and educate them by displaying this ballot paper and teaching them exactly what to do. First, the voters need to know the logo and the party acronym that they are voting for. Then they should know that the box provided right in front of that logo is what they're going to thumbprint. And we're also teaching them to know that you should make sure that you don't thumbprint between two boxes, because if you thumbprint and the ink appears between one box and another in such a way that we cannot clearly define whether you are voting for the political party on top or below, then it's voided. And I think that as we move towards 2019 and we step up our voter education strategies, more people will become aware of exactly what to do on election day.
But how easy do you imagine that process will be with 76 presidential candidates and about 79 political parties? Can you give us an idea of what a ballot paper is likely to look like on election day and how easy that will be for the unlettered voter, to use your phrase?
Thank you very much. In our several consultations with political parties, because we meet them quarterly, we had displayed various versions of the ballot paper and even the ballot boxes. And together, we had looked at it, and some templates have been approved, because you could have 2 columns or 3 columns or 4 columns. Remember, we have 91 political parties right now, and as we speak, 89 of them are presented candidates for the presidential and National Assembly elections. They were able to meet the deadline. It then means that on the ballot, we are going to have 89 political parties with their logos, their acronyms, and boxes. And we had already prepared. In fact, we had prepared for 91. The truth is, we had even prepared for a likelihood of 100. That in case we have 100 political parties, how are we going to design it? And we've been able to come up with some innovation, which the political parties have been able to examine and say, okay, let's take this type. So I think that one is settled. You know, I was even thinking about this, just the way you said, when I watched the Afghanistan election just a couple of weeks ago. And I was surprised to see that their ballot paper was just like a newspaper, opening pages and all of that. And I was wondering that, wow, how did they manage that? But I think we are good to go.
Well, let me ask you this. This is controversial, I believe. There are persons out there who have been reacting to the list of presidential candidates and National Assembly candidates that INEC published. And they are saying in particular that in the case of the President Buhari, his credentials were not indicated. And I'm sure you are aware of that controversy over whether he has a school certificate or some relevant qualification. How is INEC handling that? How are you responding to the various protests that you may have received?
Well, the purpose of displaying these details in the various constituencies is to give Nigerians the opportunity to look at the details of each potential contestant and then make up his or her mind whether he wants to challenge what is pasted there or not. So Nigerians are free to look at the credentials or documents presented by all these presidential aspirants. And if they feel aggrieved or feel that what they have submitted or presented is false, they can approach the Federal High Court or the State High Court or the High Court in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory to say we are challenging this. And that's essential. So it's in the hands of Nigerians now.
Are you saying that the Commission is not giving the President's preferential treatment? Because the headlines grabbing front pages last week was that the President was referring the electoral umpire to go get his certificate from the Nigerian army. And the major opposition party, PDP, is kicking against that, saying that he should have presented it like any other candidate, even though 2015, this was the same scenario that played out.
Well, you know that I have just said something to you that the opportunity exists. These things are not hidden. Nigerians have a duty to also take action. You know, the action should not be INEC alone. You know, Nigerians should also take action. If you feel aggrieved, go to court. If you think this particular individual that you see on the list does not have the qualification and you are sure, you are free to approach the court, I think that shouldn't be a problem at all. It shouldn't be an issue, really. Other
issues that have been raised about INEC's preparedness for the election next year is one, the indication in the INEC budget that INEC is going to provide logistics and entertainment and whatever for policemen. Also, Huriwa, particularly a human rights group, also raised the issue of INEC looking after both local and international observers. Have you had the opportunity to take a second look at that, or INEC is still standing by its position that it will provide for the policemen and also provide for observers?
Well, there is no line in the budget, the election budget for 2019, where we say we are going to provide things for security agents or local and international observers. Well, we do have a provision for those who will work as election staff, our ad hoc staff, our staff, and those that are going to be involved in election, to provide some form of feeding for them and some form of token, maybe in terms of transportation or subsistence allowance. But not that we allocated a different figure to a particular group or department. So that allegation by that organization is not correct at all.
Well, but why should INEC be the one providing food for policemen, for civil defense officials, for state security officials who are participating in the election? Is that not a way of compromising them?
Well, you know that if you check all general elections, that has been the case. That has been the case that election duty, those who are on duty, for instance, if you provide food, for God's sake, for INEC staff, and you don't give ad hoc staff, or you don't give security men, even our culture doesn't allow that. It's food, you know, and you give food to everybody. For instance, if you go to a conference or a party and they are serving food, they won't say because you are not a member of the family, they will not give you food. So I don't think, you know, it should be an issue for people to say, you know, we shouldn't give people food. But the important thing is that it is not that we budgeted a particular amount of money for security men. The budget is a wide one for those who are going to be on duty on election day, and it covers everybody, including INEC staff.
Does INEC run a kitchen? Do you have like a kitchen department that prepares food?
No, we don't. We don't run a kitchen.
For the purpose of election?
We don't run a kitchen.
Okay.
On the lighter note, I was going to ask, what are you feeding them? What, heavy, light meals?
Or sandwich, or what?
Feeding is feeding.
Okay.
Feeding is feeding. Well, I don't know which aspect again you are looking for, but feeding is feeding.
Anyway, how much?
It could be light, it could be heavy, but feeding is feeding.
How much interagency collaboration is going on ahead of the election? Because it's not just INEC that will be there. There will be security agencies that will be.
That's
oftentimes
right.
We see these agencies working at cross purposes on election day.
Thank you very much. This is a good question. We meet on quarterly basis with various stakeholders, including security agencies. There's actually a platform for that. Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. We've had a good run. But for them, all those elections I talked about, the 190 elections we've conducted since 2015, we wouldn't have been able to achieve success without them. And the synergy is fantastic. Yes, mistakes will be, people will have, you know, seen some mistakes somewhere, but for every mistake, we have a remedy. And Nigerians will agree that for a long time, I mean, many of the elections we have conducted, the issue of, you know, police harassment has reduced tremendously. And in fact, we have what we call the code of conduct for security men who will be in charge at the polling units. We organize capacity development workshops for them, and that has helped greatly. We also move the political parties by, you know, at such meetings, we discuss this issue of election security and conduct of their own agents at the polling unit, so that, you know, they don't engage in those acts that would disrupt election or activities of our staff during this window of 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. that we have for voting, the voting exercise on election day. I think then, of course, the issue of technology. We have consulted, for instance, NICOMSAT and the Nigerian Communication Commission for them to help us, because in electronic transmission of results, we realize that this country is so large, and all parts of the country are not covered by the networks, the network providers. And for you to be able to transmit both the figures and the images, you need strong service. So how do we deal with that? That's why we approach NCC and we approach NICOMSAT, and we are discussing on what can be done to help us in the process. And I think we are making a lot of progress in that line. There are other things. And the issue of vote buying that came up. The issue of vote buying that came up, we are in touch also with the ICPC and EFCC to help us. And they are also, in fact, they deployed their officers in the last 2 governorship elections to ensure that this does not take place.
Thank you very much, Rotimi Oyekanmi. You know, great pleasure having you on this program. I'm sure we would invite you again as we move closer to the general elections next year. Thank you, and all the best.
Well, it's time now for a short break on the morning show.